All right, welcome to the Home Ownership Workshop today. Welcome to LVTRise Community Center. So today, we'll be speaking on behalf of the City of Fort Worth Neighborhood Services, and we are in partnership with Tarrant Appraisal District, and they'll go over some services with you after my presentation. Today, I'm representing the City of Fort Worth Neighborhood Services Department, and our mission is building strong neighborhoods by empowering residents with housing, community development, and social services. And I'll talk a little bit more about those components here shortly. So just wanted to provide you an overview of some of the programs and services that we offer in our department. Of course, one of our missions is strengthening families and neighborhoods through social services and community development, as well as consolidating services and programs that focus on building better neighborhoods. But a few of the programs that I really want to discuss with you that's outside of home ownership, but I think will be pertinent, is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. It is a program that is free tax preparation if you make less than $60,000, whether you qualify, a church member, or a neighbor. I think this is a great program to take advantage of. Of course, we're in tax season, so I had to provide that disclaimer, right? And we do have brochures to the left of me if you're interested in learning more information. We also have one that's dear to my heart, is the Rising Stars Youth Program, where we teach youth across Fort Worth from ages 12 to 18 years old about professional development skills, training skills, and matter of fact, here soon, we'll be taking them to the University of North Texas College Tour, and that's my alma mater, so it's always nice to bring students and youth back to my school. So those are just a few of the programs outside of home ownership that I just wanted to discuss with you. Next, I wanted to talk to you about the Community Action Partners Program that's also through the Neighborhood Services Department. The goal of this program is to assist residents in living an independent, self-sufficient life by providing an opportunity for professional skills training, education, and supportive services. This is also a program that helps with utility assistance, but I also want to talk to you a little bit about what this program also provides, which is short-term certification programs, whether it be cosmetology, HVAC, equipment operating, and this program does target low-income households, but these are just a few of the programs that's available to our community that sometimes you just may not know. So instead of paying $500 or $1,000 for a short-term certification, this program may be able to assist you. Now let's talk about utility assistance. We have a program called the Comprehensive Energy Assistance Program, and it has various areas within the program. First is the Utility Assistance Program, and it can assist up to 6 utility payments per year. And we know that can be very essential when it comes to utility assistance, especially when it's 20 to 30 degrees outside, you're trying to get to 70, and your bill is normally $120, and next thing you know it's $250. So this is a program that you may be eligible for. Another program is the Household Crisis Program. They assist with a disconnection or a bill during a weather crisis. And one of the weather crises, we know Texas, it goes up and it goes down. But we had an example of that last week, how we had extreme temperatures. So this is a particular program that can assist. And within the Household Crisis Program, there's also repair of HVAC systems for priority groups. And usually those priority groups are our elderly population and our children. So just want to shout those out of different programs that we have that's available to you in your community. The next one that I want to talk about is the low-income household water assistance program. This program is new. And we are partnering with not only the City of Fort Worth Water Department, but various water districts across Fort Worth and Tarrant County and surrounding cities. And the goal is to assist low-income households, particularly those with the lowest incomes that pay a high proportion of water and wastewater services. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can have utility assistance, water assistance, I do invite you out on February 15th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Family Action Center. And as we're talking about water bill assistance, the water department has a variety of services and programs within their department, such as helping you to test your irrigation system, helping you to see if it's your toilet that's leaking. And the water department has a smart flush program where they have eligibility requirements. They can replace your toilet for free. So just know there's a lot of services within the City of Fort Worth that will be able to assist you surrounding homeownership. Now, how can you access the CAP services? You can either access by calling, and one of our colleagues will be more than happy to assist you. You can also apply online as well. So there's various ways that you can utilize the services, and this particular website will be able to go in more detail of the eligibility requirements for these programs. So going to the housing program services. Just going to speak briefly about these programs to priority repair, lead safe, and weatherization. I have a colleague here, Ms. Sherelle, that if you have any questions regarding priority repair, she'll be more than glad to go over these programs with you. And then our home buyer assistance program as well. So let's first talk about the priority repair program. Here's just a few examples of what the program covers, to electrical system failures, to roof repairs, even to plumbing issues. And what's so great about this program was that before they served up to $5,000 per household, they recently increased it to up to $20,000 per household. So instead of dipping into your savings account, your emergency fund account, this may be a program that you could be eligible for. It does have various eligibility requirements that you must be located in the City of Fort Worth, be willing to do a home inspection, and must meet household income requirements. But this is a great program for our community. Again, whether you can benefit or someone else can benefit, instead of using their own personal funds, the city can assist with that. The next program is the Lead Safe program. This program is really for those homes that were built before 1978. It usually tends to have serious risks for older adults and children. And sometimes when it comes to lead, you cannot see it. It may be behind paint, it could be behind the walls, but this is a program that they're willing to do an inspection, see if you qualify, and remove that lead out of your home so we can have a health and safety community. The next one is the Weatherization Assistance Program. The purpose of this program is to reduce energy costs for low-income families, and again, as I mentioned, particularly the elderly, people with children, and disabilities. This program really focuses on energy efficiency measures. So examples of that to improve some of the efficiency could be heat and our AC units, refrigerators, and then another example of qualified repairs under the Weatherization Assistance Program is looking at the floor insulation, attic ventilation, caulking, and duct sealing. And those are just a few examples, right? Because I'm just doing a high-level overview. But an example of that is, again, I said it could be 20, 30 degrees outside. You're trying to get your house to 70, but it's a little crack in the window, a little crack right underneath the door. And if they're able to come in and seal that, that can drastically, decrease the weather. Come on. No, you're fine. So that can definitely reduce the energy in your home when it's counteracting. You're trying to do 70, but there's little seeks and leaks and cracks there. Home buyer assistance program. So our home buyer assistance program is a mortgage assistance for first-time home buyers. However, you also qualify if you have not owned a home in the last 3 years. So if you owned a home in 2001, you sold it, did whatever you did in 2002, but you've been renting since then, we're in 2023. So you may be eligible for this particular program. So they provide up to $20,000 for homes in Fort Worth. You can use the $20,000 for mortgage assistance or use up to 3% of the loan amount. Now for the home buyer assistance program, they do have a qualified list of vendors. So in order to be eligible, you must make sure that your vendor is on that list. And of course, our colleagues can make sure they go over that with you, go what's needed. They have requirements on the purchase of the home as well as your income to see if you're eligible. So if you're interested in that, we'll have more information on how you can contact. So how can you apply for some of our great housing program services? You can contact priority repair, lead hazard, weatherization, or the home buyer assistance program. And we have brochures and flyers. So if you're interested, we'll be more than glad to speak with you after the presentation. Feel free to take a picture of the screen. And I think that covers all the housing program services for my department. Well, next I have the pleasure of introducing our representative for Tarrant Appraisal District. You have the man in town, the chief appraiser, Jeff Law, for Tarrant Appraisal District. So he'll go over some great information with you when it comes to homestead exemption and the appraisal process. So please feel free to ask all your questions while he's here. Welcome, Jeff.
Shut up. The Tarrant Appraisal District, again, my name is Jeff Law, and the Tarrant Appraisal District has been very, very happy to team up with the city of Fort Worth and try to come out into the different communities and talk about ways to save money. And the Appraisal District is no different. There are ways you can save money on your property taxes. The whole purpose of the Appraisal District was created by the state legislature in 1980. Actually, they did it in 1979, and 1980 was the first year that we came into being. And our main purpose was to provide the appraisal functions for property tax, the property tax side of it, and also administer ownership, administer exemptions, and handle the valuation protest process. And so what basically we do is we go out in the community every year. Our appraisal date is January the 1st, and we appraise all properties as of January the 1st. Then we go through the process, and there's a calendar that we'll have up here that I'll talk a little bit more about that process. But we're out in the field right now, we're out in the community right now looking at housing, picking up new houses and things of that nature to put on the appraisal roll. So local exemptions, we certify the appraisal roll to the taxing units. You need to know one thing about property tax, there's like a two-step. One part is the appraisal side of it, determining value. But the next step is determining a tax rate, how much tax rate to apply to the value, and then that determines your tax bill to the county, to the city, to the school, to the water district, to the hospital district, to the college district, so on and so on, wherever you live. But we do that appraisal roll, certification for the appraisal roll for that purpose of determining how much tax the cities and the counties will collect. And then providing services, there's actually 73 different taxing units in Tarrant County that we provide service to, we certify rolls to. A lot of cities, a lot of schools, one county, one hospital district, and one junior college district, making up 73. Exemptions is one of the big things, though, that we do. And exemptions is where you can actually save the money if you have the exemption in place. Now, I'll ask the question, how many of you in here know that if you have a homestead or a 65 and older exemption on your property right now? Okay, that's perfectly fine.
Can you have more than one when you have a homestead and the 65, or it's just?
Yes, no, you can. And let me explain what a homestead exemption is. A homestead exemption is an exemption that anyone can get as long as they own their home They live in there as their principal place of residence, and they were there, well, it used to be they were there on January 1st, but then there's been some changes to the law that the legislature has made. So I'll just be honest with you, I'm 56 years old, okay? So I don't qualify for the other exemption called the 65 and older. So I can get a homestead because I own my home and I live there. But if you are age 65 and older, you can have the homestead and the 65 and older exemption. Also, if you're my age, let's say, and you're disabled, you can have a homestead and a disability exemption. Now, the way we determine if you're disabled is the Social Security Administration will give us documentation on that. So we don't actually go out and determine if anyone is disabled or anything like that. There's other documentation that has to be provided. But we also have any disabled veterans? Okay, there's a disabled veteran exemption as well. Yes, sir.
Getting back to the disabled exemption, there are criteria, I presume, and those are for disabled exemptions?
Yes.
And those are established by?
The Texas legislature. State law.
So,
The number one thing that you have to get in order to have a disability exemption is you have to be receiving Social Security disability benefits from the Social Security Administration. And they'll give us, when you apply, you'll provide the documentation from Social Security saying I'm disabled and I'm getting benefits. Yes, ma'am.
What if there's an over 65 person that lives up at the home, but they're not the owner?
Okay, that's a really good question. The question was, what if you have a person that's over 65 that lives at the home, but they're not the owner? The exemption can only apply to the owner. Okay. Now, we have some circumstances sometimes where you'll have a married couple, and one of the individuals of the couple will be over 65, but the other one will not be. The one that's over 65 can apply for the over 65 exemption, and the couple enjoy the exemption as if they were one.
And we sisters, we live together.
Sister, okay.
She's 62.
Okay.
So we both on the deed, the warranty.
Okay, if you're both on the warranty deed, then you own just as much of an interest in the home as she does. Now, I said just as much of an interest. That's really not true. For married couples, we see married couples as one. So it doesn't matter whether the man or the woman is the 65 or not. You get the over 65 for the whole property. But if, say, me and Ricardo owned a home together, and I was 65 and he was not, I would get an over 65 homestead exemption on my half of the home. So half of the home would get the over 65, the other half would just get the homestead. Now the other half would get the homestead and over 65, and the other would just get the homestead. So if you do have two people, brothers and sisters, just two friends, not in a marital situation, we treat them as separate individuals. Now, the good thing about the over 65, there's some benefits to these things. If you are married to somebody that is over the age of 55 and you're over the age of 65, and the person that's 65 or older passes away, the person with the surviving spouse, as long as they're 55 years of age and older, they get to keep the exemptions that were established. And it doesn't matter. What if you're 65 and 64 and the person passes away, then the person that's 64 gets to keep the exemption that was put in place. So there are some good benefits like that. Let me give you some examples. Let's say, for example, you have a home that's worth $250,000. I'm going to show you how the exemption works and the benefit that you would get from it, okay? So you have a home that's $250,000. This is for a homestead exemption. The county right now does not offer any exemption whatsoever for homesteads. Okay, so you see there's a zero. So the value minus the exemption, which is zero, says the total taxable value would be $250,000. Currently, the tax rate for the county is 22 cents per every $100 of value, or about 0.22%. Your taxes for this home for the county would be about $560. Okay, now Fort Worth City, for example, this is the city of Fort Worth, $250,000 house. They give a 20% exemption. That equates to $50,000. 20% of $250,000 is $50,000. So your taxable value winds up being $200,000. $250 minus the 50, and their tax rate is 71 cents per $100 of value. So you're paying about $1,425 with a homestead exemption for the city. Schools, on the other hand, school homestead exemptions are mandated by the state legislature. Okay? This is an optional exemption where the city of Fort Worth can give you any amount from 0% up to 20%. The city of Fort Worth is giving the maximum legal amount that they can give. That's good. County can give up to 20%, but right now they have not implemented a homestead exemption. Schools, on the other hand, are mandated. All they can give is $40,000. So we have 250 minus 40 gives a taxable value of $210,000. Their tax rate's $1.28. Their school's tax rates are always the highest. Okay? School taxes is where we like to complain about our taxes a lot. You know, this isn't that bad, you know, for a $250,000 house. This, on the other hand, kind of hurts when you write that check at the end of the year. And this is the maximum amount. Now, I will tell you right now that in the legislature, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and the Governor Greg Abbott are looking to try to increase this number here to $70,000. I hope they do. We'll all enjoy the benefits of that if they do. But that has not passed yet. It's got to pass the legislative process first. Yes, ma'am.
So no matter the amount, the value of the house is just 40,000.
Yes. If this was, the question was, no matter the amount of the value, it's just 40,000. Yes. If this were to go to 300,000 next year, it would be 40,000 for 300. So this taxable value would be 260. Now there are some other added benefits to the homestead exemption. If you apply and you receive a homestead exemption, there's a thing that kicks in that says that your appraised value cannot go up more than 10% per year. Now I want to make clear, this would be representative of the market value, what we think the property would sell for if it was put on the market and sold on January 1st, what someone would pay you for the house. The appraised value, and we don't have an example of this up here, but the appraised value might be maybe 5 years ago the house was only worth $200,000, and then the next year it went to $210,000. Or I need to make a different example. Let's say it was worth $150,000 5 years ago, and the next year it goes to $175,000. Well, 10% of 150 is only 15,000, so it could only go up to, the appraised value could only go up to 165, even though I might have the market value at 175. We need to make a slide on this, okay? And then the next year it goes up to 200. Well, the appraised value can only, from 165 can only go up 10%, 16,500. So there's a limit that gets put on for homesteads. Now, again, this is a legislative year. There are several bills that have been filed with the state legislature right now to change that 10% homestead cap from 10% and some as low as 2%. I don't think those are going to pass, but there have been some that want to lower that to 5%. I think this year there's a good chance that we might get a homestead cap reduction somewhere to 5 to 8%. We'll have to wait for the legislature to go through their process though.
From the 10%?
Yeah, taking it from 10% cap, maybe, and I know a Tarrant County State Rep, Giovanni Capriglione, right now has introduced a bill to lower it from 10% to 5%. Now, in the negotiation process, that might get changed to 5.5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, or nothing. Now, what he also would like to do is people that don't own a home, but they rent a home. He also would like to see on the rental homes at least put in a 10% cap for them, which there is no cap right now for rental properties. So I think it's a good move in the right, me personally, I think it's a good move in the right direction, but we'll have to wait and see if that gets to the legislature. Let's go
But
ahead
that
and
would in
next slide.
fact be a reduction in the property tax.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
In that if they reduce it from 10 to 8, that's ultimately going to potentially reduce your property tax.
I'm going to say it probably won't, because the real estate market that we find ourselves in right now, the values are going up so fast that any reduction that they give you, if it, go back one slide, if they increase this from 40 to 70,
That's
if your value goes up $30,000, that's wiped out.
Yeah, that's
So what it does is like, well, at least my taxes didn't go up. The same thing with a homestead cap. If it goes from 10% to 8% or 10% to 5%, what it will do is it'll slow the growth of this number. It probably won't. The only thing that's going to make this number go down is either they give you a much, much larger exemption, or this number right here, the tax rates will change. Now, these rates here are set by your elected officials. The city council members, the county commissioners, the school board members. They control that number. So I don't control this number. I just simply reflect what the market's doing. And if your house, if you got a $250,000 house and somebody's willing to pay you $300,000 for it, and I've got it at $250,000, I'm too low. I should be at $300,000. And we watch the market every year for that type of thing to see where should we be. But this number here, which is actually what determines how much tax you pay, that's set by your elected officials.
So that goes up and down, up or down?
It goes.
Up.
It does. I'm being recorded here. It does go up and down, or it stays the same. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I've seen many times where this number goes up and up and up, this number stays the same. Well, what happens if this number goes up and this number stays the same? Are your taxes going up, or are they going down? They're going to go up, right? It's almost like, let's say this was a sales tax. We all know that in Texas, that the sales tax is 8.25%, right? We go by. Well, what if the restaurant rate, or what if the shoe store raises their price on their shoes by $50? Is your sales tax going to go up or down? No. Sales tax didn't change, right? It's always been 8.25%. But if they raise the price, you're going to pay more tax. And so your elected officials control this number. I have control over this number. And we have no incentive. We have nothing that's prompting us to raise this number up other than following what's happening in the real estate market. And that's what we do. We follow, and we follow the real estate market. And unfortunately, for property tax purposes, if you're wanting to sell, fortunately, prices have been going through the roof. But for property tax purposes, unfortunately, prices have been going up and up and up. Let's go to the next slide. This is an example of an homestead and over 65 exemption. Okay. This number, I think this number here is incorrect, because the county does offer a homestead exemption for 65 and older. There should be a number in this one. So let's ignore this column right here. Let's go to this column right here. The city of Fort Worth, if your same house was worth $250,000, you get the 20% homestead exemption first. Since it's a percentage, we have to calculate that first. So that's an automatic $50,000 reduction. But for the city, they offer a local option for 65 and older of an extra $40,000. So in this case, you would get a $90,000 reduction in your value, and you would only pay tax on $160,000 versus the $250,000 on the previous slide. Do we have that in the next one? That's kind of
The difference in payment.
Okay, let's go back to the one. We'll look at that in a minute. So if you look here, a person with a $250,000 house with both of these exemptions, they're only going to pay $1,100 to the city. Go back up to the other slide, as opposed to $1,400. So they're getting an extra $300 in savings because of the 65. Go back to the other one. Same thing with the school. $250. They're mandated by state law to get $40,000. They give an extra $10,000 for if you're 65 and older, and we also have the DP for if you're a disabled person. So I can be 56 years old and be disabled, and I can get the benefit of all this, even though I'm not 65. But if you're 65 and you become disabled, most likely you're better off just leaving it with the 65 exemption. The exemptions are the same. It doesn't matter whether you're disabled at 65. Now, I'm 56. If I were to become disabled and I applied for this and qualified and got it, by the time I turn 65, it might be in my best favor to not apply for the 65 exemption, because I already have the disabled persons exemption. Because there's another special benefit to being 65 and getting this exemption, and that's called a tax ceiling, which basically means that for the city and for the school, I'm going to ignore this one because this number's wrong. For these two here, this becomes my ceiling, which means in this scenario, I would never pay more than $1,140 in city tax for the rest of my life. Now, there's always exceptions to every rule, right? The exception is if you add something to your home. Let's say, as Shauna said, let's say you're 65 years old, you know, sometimes my muscles hurt a little bit more than what they used to, and I said, let's add a hot tub. Let's add a swimming pool with a big hot tub. What we would have to do in that case is we would have to come back and we would have to add the value of the swimming pool and hot tub. We would calculate what the taxes would be when you added it, and we would add that to your ceiling. So if you add anything new, then this gets adjusted. But if you don't add anything new, your taxes stay the same for the rest of your life, rest of the time you own that house. Now, when my mom and dad now are in their 70s, their mid-70s, when they turned 65 and my dad got the exemption, I said, don't ever protest your value again. Don't protest it, because you have a ceiling that's set, but there's another benefit to having an over 65 exemption, and that is called a tax proration. If for some reason you decide later on to cash in and you want to move out of this house that you're living in now, and you've got the over 65 exemption, and you've got the tax ceiling, and this house, back when you applied for it, was worth $250,000, and this is what the tax was, and now the house is worth $500,000, and you decide, I want to sell, we're going to cash in, and we're going to go buy a beach house, you know, down in Galveston. What you can do is you can come to the appraisal district and say, hey, I want to get a tax proration certificate. Okay, and you can transfer the percentage of savings of what you were paying versus what you should have been paying. And if the value goes up and up and up and up and up and up, that percentage gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I have people come into our office all the time. They're 65 years old. Their taxes are frozen. They have a ceiling, and they want to protest their value. And of course, I say this in the nicest, kindest way. I'm like, why are you here? Well, my value's gone up. Okay. If we protest, they protest their value, they get their value reduced, and guess what? Their value is so high that it never changes and never lowers their ceiling. They didn't change their tax liability. So I'm advising you the same way I would advise my mom and dad. Don't protest anymore. Let it go. It's no big deal. Okay? Because you have a ceiling in place.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit, and the ceiling is based on a specific appraised value?
At a specific time. In this scenario, let's say you turn 65 in the year that this was the case. Okay. Your house worth $250,000. You come in and we give you these two exemptions, and your taxable value is $160,000. We put the tax rate in that existed at that time, and this is what your actual tax amount. This becomes your ceiling, and it's applicable at the time you qualified, the time you applied. Now, as we go forward 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever, this amount remains the same. But that amount gets established in the year in which you either apply or turn 65. We have some people that come in at age 70 and are like, hey, I want to apply for this. I should have been here 5 years ago. Well, what we will do in that case, and there's a law, there's an exception to every rule, right? There's a law that says that you can actually go back 2 years. So you're 70 now, we'd go back 2 years and say, okay, we're going to establish your ceiling and your value and everything based upon what the value was 2 years ago, what the tax rates were 2 years ago, we can't go back 5 years to when you were 65. We go this year, we give it to you, and we go back 2 years.
So if the tax rate were to go up, it has no impact on that?
Not at all, because you've got a tax ceiling. The tax rate can go up, the value can go through the roof. Now, there have been what's interesting thing is for your school, okay? This is currently set at 40. This is a local option established by the school district. If they raise this to 70 in this session, there's a chance, and they've done this in the past, I'm assuming they'll do it again. There's a chance that they'll come back and say, this extra $30,000, we want to adjust your ceiling down because you're getting an extra $30,000 now. So typically the laws or the bills that are written will have a special caveat in there to say, we're going to give you more exemption, then we're going to give you the benefit of even lowering your tax ceiling. Now, we'll have to wait to see if they write that in, but I will tell you, in the 30 years I've been doing this, every time they've made an adjustment to this number, they've always come back and said, we need to make an adjustment to your ceiling and lower it by whatever the number that we do here. It'd be like 30,000 times this tax rate, and whatever that number is, that we would lower it. So it's a really, really good benefit to from a property tax standpoint to make sure that you have a homestead, an over 65, a disabled persons, a disabled veteran. I mean, I asked the question, was there any disabled veterans? I didn't see any hands raised, but for the live stream that we're doing, there's one exemption now that if you're 100% disabled, if the Veterans Administration comes back and has labeled you as 100% disabled and or 100% unemployable, you can get a 100% tax exemption. You don't pay any tax, period. So there's some definite benefits that are out there that can save property owners a lot of money. But the one really, really good thing that this does, over 65 sets a ceiling. So you don't have to worry about taxes. You know, in your case of sisters, if you can get your half set with a ceiling on it, then in 3 more years you can get the other half set with a ceiling too. And so you'll have some stability there. If you have just the homestead, then you get to enjoy the appraisal cap. And basically what that does is it puts the brakes a little bit on. If values are, I need to use 2 hands. If values are rising like this, then the ceiling causes your taxes to rise like this. Your taxes won't rise at the same rate that the value's rising. And again, they may be adjusting that to where it'll even flatten that out even more. So that would be a big benefit to homeowners.
But then, again, just for my understanding, if you have the over 65 and the homestead, those taxes are frozen?
Yes. Now, let me add a caveat. It's not a bad one. Right now, are you in the Tarrant Regional Water District? Or is this neighborhood? We're in the Tarrant Regional Water District here? Okay. The Tarrant Regional Water District is not allowed to set a ceiling. And the hospital district is not allowed to set a ceiling. Now, are y'all in Charlie Guerin's district, state representative district here? I would think you are. Charlie Guerin, State Representative Charlie Guerin represents a lot of the west side of Fort Worth. He has introduced a bill that would require every single taxing entity to offer a ceiling, which would include any municipal utility districts, the hospital districts, and the water districts. Now, I will tell you, he introduced this same bill about 2 sessions ago, and it didn't pass. Now, I'm hoping, and there's another man that I've talked to every year that's hoping it'll pass too, because he falls into the disabled category, and he has problems with his taxes because of the hospital district and the water district. They continue to go up. So we're hoping that for his sake and for everyone else's sake, that Charlie Guerin's bill, he's probably your state rep. I don't know. But he's on the west side of Fort Worth. But we're hoping that his bill passes, just so that when you turn 65, then your taxes should be set. Now, there's another bill. I didn't share this. The last one was that the questions didn't kind of come up. There's another bill that's been introduced that I can't remember if it's age 75 or age 80. That when you reach that point, that you don't pay tax anymore. That they'll eliminate this. I'm telling you right now, that has not passed. Okay. But there's a bill that's been filed referencing that, so you don't pay taxes at all. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not that passes. A lot of times these bills that take a lot of taxable value or takes a lot of tax off of the rolls, they come with what's called fiscal notes. And the legislature does not like fiscal notes. They tend to not pass bills that have big fiscal notes. Yes, ma'am.
My question, like you said, the tax is there. Once you turn 65, you're a homestead owner and you're 65. And mine was the 40. the tax is there, it's frozen, but you said it's not. I mean, some parts.
Yeah, your school taxes.
Right.
And let's define frozen, okay? Because the law actually says it's a ceiling,
Right,
which means that your taxes will never go above that ceiling.
right.
If we have a really bad recession, where all of a sudden now this house is worth $200,000, it's possible when we calculate the tax, your tax actually might be less than your ceiling. And you could pay this tax instead of this tax. We tend to use the term frozen because taxes tend to go up all the time.
Right.
And it's like, well, my tax never goes up, so it's like it's frozen. Well, no, what you're bumping up against the ceiling. It's never going to go higher than that ceiling. We have had times in the past where 2008 recession, values declined and people's taxes went down and they paid less than their ceiling. And then the next year they went back up and they're like, oh, you can't raise my taxes. I have frozen taxes. And it's like, well, we went down, but now we're coming back to the ceiling. Okay? But yes, this amount here in a market where things just constantly rise, and this, you should never pay more than this amount.
If it's constantly going up.
Yes.
If the value is going up. Okay.
Yes, what's on the next slide? So this is an example, again, with a $250,000 home with no exemptions whatsoever. You're going to be paying about $6,400 or almost $6,500 in tax. With a homestead exemption, you're going to get a break to about $5,600 tax, and with a homestead and over 65 or disabled, your taxes will be about $5,000, $4,900. So you're seeing, you know, almost a $1,500 break in your taxes if you apply and qualify for a homestead over 65. Now this all changes depending upon this number here. You know, if your house is only $100,000 or $150,000, these numbers will be lower to start off with, but you'll still see a savings if you apply for the homestead and over 65 or homestead and disabled, whatever you might qualify for. And our office will help you determine what's best for you. There have been times I've had people come in, they're like, look, I've been disabled and now I'm 65 and I want to apply for the over 65. We'll do all the math and come back and say, yes, it's a good idea for you to apply for the over 65. Or we'll come back and say, if you apply for the over 65, when we have to reset your ceiling, you're better off staying with the disabled person's exemption. So we'll help you from that standpoint of saying which is the best route to go.
You made a comment a little bit ago about going back a couple of years type
Yes.
thing. So you turned 65, like say July last year. Could you apply for the over 65 for a part of that year?
Yes.
Get a discount on that?
That's a really good question. The question is what if you turn 65 in the middle of the year and you forgot to apply? Can you go back and apply for the part of the year? I got one better for that. Because in the over 65 exemption, it doesn't matter when you turn 65. We treat you as though you were 65 for the whole year. So if you turn 65 in July and you didn't apply, you can come to our office and apply for the homestead, the over 65, and we'll go back the next year and say, okay, we'll give you this over 65 and the homestead. And if you didn't even apply for the homestead, we will give you the homestead in the year before that.
Okay.
And then you'll get a refund. Now, the one good thing about taxes, most people don't believe this because, you know, a lot of other companies like credit card companies and things like that, they're not really good at giving automatic refunds, right? Tax offices are really good at giving automatic refunds. And anytime you apply for an exemption that you qualify for that you hadn't done, and we go back 2 years, the tax office, Miss Wendy Burgess's office, is automatically required by law to give you refunds, send the refund out immediately. So we're good at giving the money back to you once we get the qualifications and everything set. So it's kind of like, don't worry, the money's coming, that type of thing. It may take a few weeks, but the money's coming, that type of thing. Yes, ma'am.
Why are the taxes higher on vacant lots? I have a vacant lot.
Uh-huh.
It's always higher than a house.
Well, as compared to what? A vacant lot as compared to what?
Well, we pay property taxes on the vacant lot and the house.
Okay, so you have a house and a piece of land, and then you have a vacant lot next to the house? Well, I would probably need to look at the individual circumstances to figure that out, because typically with vacant land, you don't get any type of exemptions on it, no tax breaks, no ceilings, no caps, no appraisal caps. And so I would have to look at kind of how the value history has been on the house and the land versus the value history on the land.
I can put a garden on there soon.
You do the ad.
Can you do like a vacant lot or something like that as like agricultural?
Good question. The question was, can you do agricultural on a vacant lot? The answer right now is probably not. And the reason I say probably not is, with regards to agricultural, there is a term that, I will say this, the state legislature has never come back and said, this is the minimum number of acres you have to have for an agricultural designation, okay? Because Texas is so big and so diverse. When you look at the piney woods of East Texas versus the wonderful desert lands of West Texas, what you can raise on those two pieces of land is completely different. If I'm going to raise cattle in East Texas, yeah, I could probably do pretty good on 5 acres. If I were to take that same 5 acres and those same cows and put them in West Texas, they might all die because there's just nothing to eat out there. So what the legislature did was that they said that appraisal districts have to look at the degree of intensity typical in the area. And that fancy phrase is a phrase that we look at and say, what's typical for Tarrant County? Now, our general rule of thumb is that typically anything less than 5 acres, we automatically deny. Now, you have the right to protest that, and you can come before the appraisal review board and you can protest it. We can have a hearing and we can discuss and this and that, and you might be able to. 5 to 10 acres, we'll look at it real closely and say, what are you doing? Are you raising chickens? You're raising goats? You're raising produce? Are you raising cattle? You're raising bucking bulls for the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo? What are you using it for? And again, if that use is somewhat typical, we may grant the ag between 5 and 10. Typically over 10 acres is just prove to us that you're using it for agricultural purposes and then they've been using it for a historical period of time. 5 out of 7 years. So 10 acres is kind of our break-even point, where anything over 10, as long as we can prove it's being used for raising livestock, raising food or fiber, which basically means if you're growing hay that feeds livestock or feeds horses, that qualifies. If you're raising cotton, if you're raising animal feed like corn or soybeans or cotton or things like that. So in Tarrant County, the size part of it matters. Now, I will tell you that there is a law on the books that's in Austin, for example, what they had in some of the downtown areas where they had some lots. And some people got together and said, you know, well, we're going to have urban farming. And they would lease out spaces on lots to people to come in, and because nobody in Austin knows how to grow any. Well, they might know how to grow something, but they don't have any farms in Austin, right? So they would do urban farming. And there are some special requirements with you could get agriculture on an urban farm setting, but there's some special rules that apply to it. We don't have any in Tarrant County, but they do it. They do it in Austin.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What if you have a home and it was willed by my grandmother, and it is an old house? It was built in the 40s.
Okay.
Would y'all give special taxes or exemptions, homestead for historical?
Okay. There, maybe. I don't want to be so dodgy on the questions. There is a historical tax exemption for older homes. But where you have to go is you have to go to the city of Fort Worth. The city of Fort Worth has to designate it as a historical home. Now, not Shauna. There's another department that does that. And sometimes it has to have the historical register marking on it. And the city has to make a determination if it is deemed historical. And if we get the letter, you apply to the city and the city says, yes, it is, then you get a letter, then you come to us and then we designate it as historical and then you can get an exemption. But it has to have some type of significance for the city to do that. I don't really know what and I know Shauna, I'm looking over there, but I know Shauna probably doesn't know what the requirements are either. But there's some specific rules that the city of Fort Worth, because there's a lot of old houses in Fort Worth and not all of them apply or can qualify for historic exemption.
And not to go farther with that, but if we have one that gets that designation, there are probably limitations on what you can do to it.
Oh, yeah.
That might compromise the historic.
Yeah, I think the historic,
Which would
yeah.
eliminate that.
I used to work down in Hood County, down in Granbury, and the historic square in Granbury, they have a historic society, and I remember there was one lady who she wanted to repaint. They made her go back and chip through all the paint on the property to find out what the original color was, and they were going to make her go back to the original color, and they were going to make her restore to this.
Very long.
And she wound up not repainting the building because it was like, I can't do that. It was just, yeah, it was very tough for her. I do want to highlight this point too, scams with regards to homestead exemptions. I wish we had a lot more people here. Because there are some people out there that want to scam people in applying for homestead exemptions. Homestead exemptions are free. If you'll just come to our office or call our office, we will help you and step you through the process with no charge whatsoever. But there are some people out there and some companies out there that want to charge for this. They want to charge like $45 for the initial fee. And basically what they'll do is they'll mail you a homestead application that I'm providing to you for free right over there. Okay, and most of you already have the document. So they'll charge you $45 and send you that document. And then what they'll do is they will, once the application is applied for and we grant you the 2 years back, that part of their contract is that they'll require you to change your mailing address to their address so that the refund will go to them. They'll take their 30% cut of the savings that you got. They'll send you the 70% back, and then they'll change your mailing address back to your home. I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that you come to our office, go online, print off your form, take a form with you. Take multiple forms. We printed out about 70. So if you have friends that want the form too, do that. But we don't charge for homestead exemptions. Nobody in the state of Texas charges for no appraisal district in the state of Texas charges for homestead exemption, but there are some scams out there that people are taking advantage of. But we had at one point in time a stack of homestead applications about this tall, represented over $1,500 in $45 fees. These people already had a homestead exemption. So beware of those type of scams. We actually have another thing that the legislature came back and said, if you go to our TAD website and you say, I want to see if I have my over 65 in place, you won't find it on our TAD website because the legislature passed a law that says I can't put anything on my website that gives away your age. So I can put there that you have a homestead on your account, but anyone can get that, right? Any homeowner can get that. But I can't put your over 65, and I won't put your disability too, because they were afraid that people would prey on either the elderly or the disabled. So you can't find that. But if you do, when we send your appraisal notice to you in April, if you look at the bottom of your appraisal notice, it'll tell you if you have your homestead exemptions in place already. This is just an appraisal counter. I'll go through this quick because we're about 5 minutes to close. Typically January through May, we're doing the appraisal work. That's what we're doing right now. We're going out in the field, we're picking up new houses, measuring new buildings, taking properties off the roll that may have burned down or been torn down or destroyed. Then around April the 1st, we go into what's called the equalization phase. This is when on April 15th, I'm going to send you that blue letter saying that your value possibly went up. And we're kind of behind right now. But again, if you're 65, don't worry about it. You got a tax ceiling. It's gone away here, but you got a tax ceiling. Don't worry about it too much. But that's the time in which I'm going to be sending out those blue appraisal notices, letting people know how much their property's worth, and then taking in the protest, saying, well, I don't think it's worth that much, and it'll be like, well, why do you not think it's worth that much? Here's some of the evidence that I have, here's sales that I have that in your neighborhood. Well, I got a cracked foundation, or I need to repaint, or my roof went through we had a bad storm last night. I know stuff around my backyard was blown around, but roof shingles might have got blown off, roof might have been damaged. So that type of stuff, we negotiate and we look at it. Then we get into the assessment phase. This is an important phase that most people don't think about when it comes to property tax. This is the time in which your local elected officials are saying, okay, here's all the value that Mr. Law said that we have for this year to assess. How much money do we need to provide the services for our citizens? And they take that value that I gave them, let's say it's $150 billion, big number, and they say how much revenue. So they come up with a revenue number and they do the math. What tax rate on this $500 billion worth of value will generate the amount of money for our revenue that we want? But this is, I had last year, I had 200,000 people protest their property value last year. How many people showed up at Fort Worth City Hall to contest the property tax rate? 20? It was between 2 and 20. Not many. They just don't go. And I asked this question, I have taxing unit meetings in my office every quarter, and I asked this question during this time of the year. How many people showed up? Most of them say nobody. But I got a whole bunch of people coming down and protesting the value. And then we'll have someone on camera where we'll have an area of crime and say, oh my gosh, if we can't get rid of these drug houses, it's going to cause my property values to go down. It's like, well, wait a minute. You come to me all the time saying your value's not worth anything, but now you're telling the TV news station that people don't want their value to go down. People want, that's the biggest investment we have, right? And we don't want our value to go down. We want our value to go up, but we don't want to pay more tax. But the problem is that people will come file a protest to try to beat the value down, and I get it. We're not right on everything. But this is an important part too, where people need to get involved with, do we really need that much revenue to operate the city, the counties, and the schools, and things like that? Different issue. And then finally, in October 1st, that's when Wendy Burgess sends out the lovely tax bills, and I saw one of them over there. That's when she sends out the tax bills, and then she tries to collect taxes. January 31st is the last day to pay your taxes without penalty and interest. And then after that, we get into what's called the delinquency phase of people trying to collect the delinquent taxes. Let's go on to the next one. I need to go faster. Each taxing unit sets its own tax rates. If you want to really get involved in what taxes are worth, get involved in the tax rate process. They generate the revenue. I've kind of talked about the property appraisals are determined by the appraisal district and used by the taxing units to calculate how much revenue that they'll need. Here's our location, our building. We're at 25. We're over by Northeast Mall. We're kind of a long ways from here, but we're over by Northeast Mall. Questioning TAD's value. You have the right to protest your value. Everybody has the right to protest their value. But when you come in to protest your value, don't come in and say, I'm protesting my value because my taxes are too high. The appraisal review board or whatever other reason. Come in, but also don't come in without bringing evidence. Bring pictures. If you do have a cracked foundation, go get some bids. People will come out and give you a free bid on your house. Show pictures of the roof. Show pictures. Now don't do this. Don't come out and take a picture like right here. Because I don't know how big that crack is when you take a close-up of it. Give me some context. Give me some perspective of the problem that you're dealing with. Maybe you're in the floodplain. Maybe you're in the floodplain that we didn't know before. Now we have some pretty good GIS mapping tools to pretty much know where the floodplains are right now. But maybe your account got missed or something. We only have 1.8 million accounts that we have to try to appraise every year. So if we're 99.9%, you do the math. If we're 99.9% accurate, there's some that still need some work. Go ahead.
I understand that you can put you in a rush, that you're in a rush, I got it.
I'm trying to get you out of here.
Oh, no.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stay and answer questions. Yeah, I'll stay and answer questions. Do we have the, is this it?
Yes.
Okay. There's one other thing I want to talk about. There's two other things that I want to talk about, and I'll stay and answer questions. One thing is I made a comment about filing a protest and coming before the appraisal review board. Now, the appraisal review board is nothing but a group of citizens that come in and kind of act as a juror for resolving taxpayer questions and protests. If I have appraised your house at $250,000 and you think that's wrong, and you think it should only be worth $200,000, and you come file a protest, this is what's going to happen. And we go to a formal appraisal review board hearing. The appraisal review board is either going to agree with me or they're going to agree with you. They're going to sustain my value at $250 based upon the evidence, or they're going to agree with you and set your value at $200 based upon the evidence, or they're going to disagree with both of us and they're going to set a value somewhere between $200 and $250. That's typically what's going to happen. Now, this group of ARB members are citizens just like you, and the board of directors of the appraisal district has authorized the ARB to have 85 members for the Tarrant Appraisal District. Harris County has almost 200 members. Harris County is Houston.
Yeah.
Dallas County, I think, is up at 120 members. The problem is we have about 51 members right now. So I've told the lady that's over this area that when I come and speak like this, I'll encourage folks that if you're retired, okay, and you want a secondary kind of, it's not a job, it's a servantship basically. You come down and you serve, but you do get paid $185 a day per diem for being there, and going through some training and sitting down, and it's basically a commitment. I'm sorry?
Working with you?
No, you don't work for me. The appraisal district is you're actually, what happens is if you're interested in something like that, you can come in and there's an application on the Tarrant Appraisal District's website you fill out. We give that to the local administrative district judge in Tarrant County. The local administrative judge is the one who appoints the members. I don't appoint them, the board of directors doesn't appoint them, he appoints them. We just kind of help facilitate the process. I do because the ARB doesn't have a budget. The appraisal district does have the budget for the per diems. But a person can make about $185 a day serving in this capacity, and you work kind of May, June, July, and August. It's kind of a good way that a person could come in, make $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 if they, over a summer serving the community, and it's desperately needed because again, we had 200,000 protests last year, and they don't hear all of those. There's a lot of them that are settled informally. We try to do that. But if that's something you're interested in, if it's something that you have friends that might be interested in, somebody that said, they just maybe need to make a little extra money, and they have the time to do it. It can be kind of an 8 to 5 job during the summer, but it's a good opportunity for somebody to make a little extra money and then also serve the community. You would not be working for me. And I know that, yeah, that's a bad thing. And the other thing I want to show you too, can you pull up the tax info?
Yes, sir.
Regarding the tax rates that we talked about earlier, we used to put on the blue notices an estimate of tax. We don't do that anymore because the legislature took that away. Because the legislature instructed appraisal districts to set up something called TarrantTaxInfo.com. Okay? That's not it. Oh, sorry. Go back if you can. Well, what this TarrantTaxInfo.com does is it requires the taxing units, the cities, the counties, the schools, the MUD districts, all them, to put on this website the tax rates that they're looking at adopting. And what the appraisal district does, TarrantTaxInfo.com or com. I think you might have to do that. We'll see. I think you got to go to www. There it is. There it is. Put in Smith. But what they do is the taxing entities have to enter some tax rates in there. And let's find one. Let's don't do an $8 million one. Can you show that? Let's find something much more reasonable. Hit next. I just want to find like a house. Here we go. Here's a 330. Pick this one. All right, click on the view. So what this does is it gives you, the taxpayer, the ability to go put in your account number, and you can go do this tonight when you go home. Put in your account number, so put in your name, put your account number in there. And what it does is it shows all this information. This is last year's taxes. This was $73.25 was last year's tax rate. And then they have something called the no new revenue taxes, the voter approval taxes, and the proposed tax rate. Well, what happened in 2022 for taxes, 2021's tax rate was 73.25. Now what that means is for every $100 of value, you got to pay 73 cents in taxes. So if you take that your value of 250 and divide it by 100, you can multiply it by this 0.7325 and calculate exactly what your taxes are going to be. Okay? You could also think about it if you really like math, it's nothing more than converting it to a percentage. It's 0.73%. Okay? But last year, 2021, the tax rate was 73.25. All of this information over here has to be input by the city by state law. And what this is okay, they came back and said, well, for 2022, we're going to propose 71.25. Well, that's good. That's 2 cents less, right? They're proposing going from 73 to 71. That's a good thing, right? Values went way up. Now they're offering to lower the tax rate. That's good. But the legislature says, no, there's two other tax rates that we want you to tell people about too. One's called the no new revenue rate. It used to be called something called the effective tax rate. And that's the tax rate that the city would need to set in order to not have any extra revenue other than new construction. So in other words, if the city said, well, we need $10 billion to operate, and I raise the value by 40% across the board, and they come back and said, you know, we only need $10 billion to run the city this year. Think about this. If they needed $10 billion at rates 40% less, and they only need $10 billion this year at rates that are 4% higher, what has to happen to the tax rate? It has to go way down, right? So look here. They're saying this was our last year tax rate, 73.25. The no new revenue, the tax rate necessary to generate the same amount of revenue this year as last year, only needs to be 66 cents. Isn't that a whole lot lower than 71? So what does that tell you? If 66 generates no new revenue and they adopt a 71, they generated more revenue, right? Because my values went up nearly 20% in Tarrant County last year. This other one here is called the voter approval rate. By law, they can take their effective tax rate and add a certain percentage to it, and they can, and with some other big calculations, by law, they can take it to 79.98 and not ask you, the voters, for any input at all. It's called the voter approval rate. If they go above that, they have to get your approval. But this is an interesting thing, okay? Last year, again, Mr. Smith's taxes were $1,772 for the city. If they adopted the no new revenue to 66.68, which is way lower than that, the taxes would only be $17.75. They'd go up $3. Now this makes sense to me because I've been doing it for nearly 34 years. What happened is Mr. Smith's value went up significantly. This is what his tax was last year. I raised his value significantly because that's what the real estate market was doing. And even at a tax rate of 66 cents, his tax still goes up $3. It means his value went way up. But what happens is because they are proposing this and they're adopting this, his taxes are going to go up nearly $1,800. The whole point of the legislature creating I wish there was more people here. I sound like a preacher now, don't I? The whole point of the legislature creating this is for you to look here and say, okay, this is what my taxes were. If they will adopt this rate, my taxes will almost be the same. If they go up here way up to this one, my taxes are going way up. But what they're proposing is this, which is still going to be a $121 increase of tax on me. Now, and there's a place on here, if you continue on down, or I think actually you dig in, click on that plus right there. This even gives you an idea of kind of how it looks. Go on, scrolling down. Let me see. I haven't been on the site in a long time. There's a place where, right here. Hang on, keep going. There's a place where you can provide input back to the city, and back to the school, and back to the county.
That's where the meetings
Did I
are.
miss it?
That's where the meetings are, so that's what you.
Yeah. And you know what? It may be disabled now that the time for that period has passed. And so after a certain
public feedback.
Okay, I'm sorry, there it is. But you can come right here and you can fill out this form, and this will go straight to the city. Or it'll go straight, well, you can tell them where I support this, I don't, and I think you guys need to stop raising taxes. my taxes are already too high, you know, whatever the comment may be. And that goes directly back to the city, the county, or the school.
What is this website again?
It's called TarrantTaxInfo.com. You ever get a little small postcard from me that's about that big? It's got a picture of downtown Fort Worth skyline on it. State law requires me to mail a postcard to every single homeowner in Tarrant County. It costs me $250,000 to mail postcards. I've had to mail it 3 times. $750,000. We're begging the legislature to stop making us mail it because it's $750,000 I've spent mailing a postcard. And the very first year we did this, about 20,000 people went to the site. There's 800,000 real and personal property owners in Tarrant County. And so I'm spending $250,000 to try to notify people of this website. And I don't know that you've ever heard of it before, right? It is actually on our blue notices. I would encourage you to go peruse it, look at it, because there's a lot of information, and the legislature made us put this out there. Every appraisal district in the state of Texas is listed. It has a site like this, and it's there for the sole purpose of you see your value, and you say, well, that's either too high, it's just right, or it's too low, and you either protest or you don't say anything. But then the tax rate side, you come back out here, scroll back up to the numbers. Scroll all the way back up to the top, right here, right there. The tax rate side, nobody pays any attention to this. Go ahead and close the other one down. Yeah, take that, click the minus, yeah. Okay, now scroll it back here where I can touch it. Look at your school. Mr. Smith's school taxes. $1,700 for the almost $1,900 for the city tax. But look at his school. Look at his school. 134, 120 is the no new revenue, 128 is the voter approval, and they went to the 128 voter approval rate. They actually lowered. School districts have their hands tied a lot more. While we want to complain a lot about how much school tax we pay, they really don't have much control over their tax rate because the state legislature dictates how much they can really do with school rates, okay? But there is some arguments that really the state should kick in more money for the schools. And if the governor and lieutenant governor and some of the folks down in Austin, if they have their way, we might actually see that this year. Or maybe next year, because the legislature's in session right now, but most of the bills that they enact, they don't go into effect until September the 1st or January the 1st of next year. So we'll see. But you got your college district, obviously 1,900, 3,700, and then these others. Tarrant County's only 700, 400. Hospital districts almost the exact same as that. But again, if you're 65 and older, and if Mr. Smith was 65 and older, I wouldn't want to go try to find one right now because of time, but I could show you that this rate and this rate would all be the same because of the ceiling. Now, again, the hospital district and the Tarrant Regional Water District, they can't do ceilings yet. So these will fluctuate. Okay, I'll hush and I'll talk to you each about questions if you have it. But I hope this has been helpful to you.
Very helpful.
If you don't have a homestead, I encourage you to apply. It's not like taking a college test. It's fairly easy to fill out and complete. But the main rules for the homestead is that it has to be your principal place of residence. You have to own it. And you can't have more than one homestead. You can't have a homestead here and have a homestead in Waco. You can only have one homestead. And you can technically only have one principal place of residence. I've argued with people before and say, well, we spend 50% of the time in Texas and 50% of the time in Colorado. Okay, which is your principal place? What are you going to claim as your principal place of residence? I'm sure they say, oh, here. And then they run off to Colorado and they apply up there too. They don't probably know anything about the housing. But there are some people that are getting a lot smarter with regards to how to look into some of that stuff. The biggest issue, and I'll hush up after this, I promise, but the biggest issue we have with over 65s are people that pass away. You'll have your grandmother, for example, that she owns the home, she's living there, she's got the over 65 exemption, and she passes. And nobody really probates the will really quickly. It's, nobody's may not move into the house, and so the house stays in a status. They don't change the ownership, they don't probate the will, and now even more these days, people aren't even doing obituaries like they used to. They're not, used to, you put something in the newspaper, right? They're not even doing that hardly much anymore. You got to go to the individual funeral homes, and they might do an obituary there. So it's sometimes challenging for us to find those and discover that, oh, grandma passed away, and so the homestead exemption needs to come off. The over 65 needs to come off. And there is a law that says if it's erroneously granted, I'm supposed to go back 5 years and take that homestead exemption off, and then Ms. Burgess is going to send you a tax bill for 5 years worth of back taxes. It's very painful. I don't like the law. I wish they'd change it. I've asked people to change it. But that's probably the biggest one we have is when someone passes away, we're not aware that they pass away. We're pretty good at catching obituaries. We're pretty good at finding different things. But a lot of times what happens is somebody will pass away, a year or two later, the estate will sell the house, and then that will trigger the homestead needs to come off, because when it goes to a new owner, everything changes, everything starts over. So I would encourage you that if you know of anybody like that or know a situation, it is best to come in and say, hey, that person passed away, and they don't get the exemption anymore. And a lot of times we'll just take it off for now and move forward. But if we kind of discover I can quote you the law. The law says the chief appraiser shall remove the exemption and back assess for 5 years if it's deemed. And I don't like that word shall. I'd rather it say may. May is a much softer kind of a gentler word.
It provides discretion.
May gives discretion, shall does not. Anybody have any other questions? You didn't ask a question all night. How many homes do you own?
Just one.
Awesome. And you have the homestead exemption?
I got a paper, but I wasn't sure what.
Go to our website real quick. I want to show y'all where to go look for the exemption, and you can go do this, okay? Let's just go to tad.org, tad.org. You'll get this screen here. Let's just put in a different name besides Smith. Put in like Thompson or something a little less common than Smith. And let's find a home. Yeah, that top one there, 225,000. That'll be good. You'll pull up. Okay, let's back up real quick. Don't go down there yet. When you put in the address or you put in your account number, go back to the previous screen. You went a little too fast. Back. I don't need to look on your computer, don't you? Right there. Once you put in the address or the account number, you'll get this screen here. You select your account. Okay. Now, if you put in an account number, it probably will be the only one up there. But since we put in the word Thompson, it shows all the Thompsons. So,
What is the account number? Is that an assigned number?
yes, it's an assigned number. If you get your blue appraisal notice, it'll be on there. If you get your tax bill, it'll be on there, and you can put it in there. But you could put your name in there. But if you're like Smith, you may have to put Smith and then your first name or stuff like that. So we'll go back to that first one. We click on the account number and you open up the account. And then this right here is information about your account. It's going to give you a map. It's going to have your neighborhood. It's going to have some information about there. You scroll on down. It's going to have property data. It's going to tell you the approximate size of your home, 1,400 square foot, 7,000 square foot land, that many acres. Here is just some other information. The taxing jurisdictions going down. Gives the owner, the address, and then we show you all the previous owners on the property. And if you want, you can click on these right here, and it'll actually take you to Mary Louise Nicholson, the county clerk's website, and show you a picture of the deed. Scroll on down. Here's your value history for the past 5 years. Now, pending is because we're working on 23 right now. So once we get those set and appraisal notices go out, that'll populate. But here's the values. We see we went from 149 to 222. It's just that's $70,000 in a few short years. Right here at the very bottom, you'll see exemptions. This, I don't know why this person doesn't have a homestead exemption, and maybe it's a rent house. I don't know. But there are no exemptions on this property. And this section right here, 25027, this is the one that says we can't put anything on here that tells anyone how old you are. things like that. But if you'll go home and you'll pull up on tab.org and scroll to the very, very bottom, you'll see whether or not you have a homestead exemption there. Again, if you're 65 and older, it won't show that, but you'll need to probably then look at a tax bill or an appraisal notice to see if you already have that on there. And if you don't know, just call our office tomorrow and, you got the form. You can just go ahead and fill out the form. If you have questions about the form, you can either ask us tonight or you can call the office tomorrow. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry, last question. Can you touch on the topic about deferred taxes?
Deferred. Yeah, that's a great question. Deferred. We need to incorporate this in our slides because it's a great savings for taxpayers. If you're 65 years of age or older, and I believe if you're disabled, you can do what's called a tax deferral. What that basically means is that you would apply to the appraisal district and say, I want to defer my taxes. Now, when we use the word defer, does that mean you never have to pay them ever again? Not necessarily. You're deferring it to another time, right? Well, on a tax deferral, if you're 65 and older, what you can do is you can defer them. And normally what happens is let's just say grandma defers her taxes and then lives and lives and lives and lives, and grandmother finally passes away. Then the estate gets the property, and the estate now has the responsibility of paying those back taxes. Now, in some people's minds, it's like, you know what? I've got a $500,000 house over here. My sister's got a $1 million house over there. My mom and dad are living in this $100,000 house. I'm not going to move out of my $500,000 house. My sister's not going to move out of her $1 million house to go live in the $100,000 house. So it may be a situation like, go ahead and defer your taxes, and then when you pass away, we're just going to sell the house. We'll pay off all the back taxes, and we'll give the proceeds away to me and my sister, that type of thing. So for some people, that's a really good thing because you never have to pay your taxes again when you defer your taxes. But they will come due. They will come due to the estate or to your family later on.
Is that hand in hand when people can apply for a payment plan?
No, a payment plan is different.
Okay.
And the payment plan it's only done through Wendy Burgess's office. So if you have delinquent taxes, and I don't think they set up payment plans on people that are not delinquent. I think you have to be delinquent. But you're going to go to Wendy Burgess's office and apply for a payment plan, and she can give you anywhere from a year to 36 months to pay your taxes off. Again, it will continue to accrue penalty and interest, but you're not going to get nasty letters from her or from law firms or things like that. Okay, but that's another good question too, as far as the payment plans. But in Tarrant County, we do have a couple of good things. We have the half payment rule, where you pay half your taxes. I think it's in November, and then you pay the other half in June. So that's helpful. People that are 65 and older have quarterly payments. You can pay 1/4 of your payment by the delinquency day of January 31st. 2 months later, you pay the next quarter. 2 months later, you pay the next quarter, and you're not delinquent in any of those situations. So then there's another one called a 3-2-1 discount, but I don't think anybody in Tarrant County offers that. That's where if you pay your taxes in October, you get a 3% discount. November, it's 2% discount. December, it's 1% discount. January, it's no discount. But they don't do that here in Tarrant County. There's my timer right there. Okay, I'll hush. It's good information though.
Going back to a while ago, I turned 65 last year.
Okay.
So if I